Good evening and welcome back to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Coleman. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the message boards, joined with the best host that money can't buy, Will Massasak. You know him as Bradshaw to Ben and Corey Karbowski. And I hope you all can hear this, but this is a little bit of a victory. Ding-dong, the witch of the West is dead. That guy, Matt, no longer coordinator of your Pittsburgh Steelers. So if you have a drink, feel free to pop one.
Had I been thinking about it, I would have gotten a Canadian beer. What are you drinking tonight, Jeremy?
All right. So this is brought to you by New Glarus Brewing out of Wisconsin, known as the Spotted Cow here in the Midwest. They only sold in Wisconsin, very hard to get, but I have some friends that have family up there. They always bring me back cases for the football season because let's face it, I'm a Hoosier football fan. I need plenty of beer to get through the game. So, but very good stuff. Will, what are you?
Hey, wait, do you know the difference between Wisconsin and Indiana?
What's that one?
Me neither. I am breaking out something new, the Lagunitas Island Beats.
Ooh.
And I was going to say the Island Beats Canada because he's beating off somewhere into the sunset. Shit. Who gets to talk first about this?
Well, so I'm going to talk first, but I'm going to let you guys really dive into it. But I mean, boy, talk about out of left field, Steelers fans. Like we all thought we were going to be saddled with Matt Canada for, the rest of this year. Shoot, there were rumors that he might even return for 2024. And sure enough, all it takes is one bad game against the Browns to get him out of town. Can we have a few more bad games against the Browns to get some other people out of town? Maybe that's asking for too much. After all, this is the first time in franchise history since 1941, I believe, that they've made a change in season that's actually resulted in a firing. They have made some changes that have resulted in demotions during the season. But
Jeremy, get this. When that happened in 1941, a co-owner of the team fired himself. So it is like that's not even like really firing. That's just being like, I'm out of here.
Right? But I mean, guys, just dive into this. Will, I'll let you dive into it first. I mean,
because I might not live long enough to get to the end of Corey's answer. I mean, first of all, it reminds me in a way a little bit of the Bruce Arians getting fired after the Denver Broncos playoff game because the defense got shredded by Tim Tebow and then they fired the offensive coordinator. And Matt Canada, don't get me wrong, he could have been fired halfway through last year or even at the end of Ben's last year, and I would have been completely satisfied with that result. But it was like this week, the quarterback played terribly. And it was against the number one defense in the league. Like almost everybody is going to look bad against Cleveland sometimes. So it was just the timing of it was weird. But I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. It's great that he's gone. On the other hand, I don't know. I'll let you guys enjoy it first, and then I'll talk about why I'm not sure it is the big event that we all would like.
We're still kind of reveling in this, Will. It's just like it happened. It's unbelievable. Corey, thoughts, buddy?
I mean, one thing that really, really excites me about this is I don't know if we're going to bring in a legit OC, but this at least puts us in line to be one of the first ones in line for a good OC where, if we didn't fire him till the end of the year, I could easily see a scenario where we drag our feet for a week and one or two teams make some other hires and, then we fire Canada, then we're stuck with some Joe Schmo from, I don't know, wherever, Pitt.
Somewhere in the Pittsburgh area.
Someone in the Pittsburgh area. But I mean, this just wasn't expected. I think that's what really adds to the hype about it was that all of us assumed at this point that he was just going to last to the end of the season. We were going to have to sweat out him being hired again. But I'm just glad it's over. We'll talk about this a little, I'm sure, but Sullivan has the track record of doing all the stuff that people hate Canada for. And Eddie Faulkner's only time ever as an OC was when he wasn't calling plays for Ball State in 2009. And they went 2-8. So it's not like you have two.
But here's the thing, man. It's like Randy Fichtner ran like a wide open offense at Memphis where he subbed liberally, had like different packages involved, like 15 different skill position players. Like none of that stuff happened in real life. I mean, look, it's great that he's replaced. I think the realistic thing is to not expect for much else to really maybe there'll be some window dressing changes, but I don't really know how much big change there's going to be. The timing of this move to me is all about the fact that things that don't ordinarily happen in Pittsburgh. The owner was catching heat. The quarterback was catching heat in a way that was reflected poorly on the people that drafted him and developing him. The coaches are catching heat. The head coach catching heat. These are things that are they ramped up to a level in the last week that it was already working the week before, but they won, and that kind of like pushed it down the road a week. But people were ready to do this a week ago or 2 weeks ago, so it's kind of like this move in a way mostly is about deflecting that negative energy away from the faces of the franchise and the people that run things. And I know the idea of already having Sullivan calling plays. I'm not sure how much. If you're looking to develop Kenny Pickett, which is the most important thing right now, it's either Pickett either has to prove he can play or they need to move on from him, and they need to get that decision tree worked out as quickly as possible. Well, promoting the guy who was his quarterback coach that wasn't developing him, that was helping him regress, seems like the worst possible choice to me. But that's why we're on the show and not.
I mean, is Eddie Faulkner the guy then? I mean, again, 2009, 2-8 Ball State. I mean, that's not really a resume, and he didn't even call plays. So like people were like, "Oh, why not just have the OC call the plays?" Eddie Faulkner might end up being an OC. I don't know, but that's not really the guy I'd want to throw in there right now with his resume.
No, I mean, it's hard to say. Is he a good running back coach? He's got like one guy that's underperforming and one guy that's massively overperforming. What does that mean? Like I don't know. I'm not sure I know. But yeah, I just feel like the real fallout from this is yet to be seen. It's like, will there be pressure on Mike Tomlin to make wholesale changes to his staff and his approach to the NFL, or will he be forced out at the end of the year? Not entirely impossible. This makes it. Let's put it this way. I would have said it was almost impossible that Mike Tomlin was going to be forced out of the Steelers, maybe ever, let alone at the end of this year. I would say what went down with this makes me feel like there's at least a possibility that there's a little warmth on his seat.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, you go, Jeremy.
Yeah, honestly, guys, I mean, there's so many interesting little, layers to this onion. I think we could peel back so many different layers. One, it was initially rumored that Art Rooney fired Matt Canada. Then Tomlin came out in his press conference and says, the buck stops with me, I fired him. So right there, there's kind of conflicting answers right there. So that's one onion. Two, you guys already kind of touched on it. You have Eddie Faulkner as the offensive coordinator, but then you have Sullivan calling plays. I know Faulkner's supposed to be more install because Sullivan at least has experience play calling. Corey, you alluded to it. The one time he called plays was in college. Well, hey, actually,
he didn't call plays. His head coach called plays.
Say that again, Corey.
He wasn't even the head coach called the plays. He was the play designer for a 2-8, or an assistant play designer for a 2-8 Ball State.
Gotcha. Well, Corey,
maybe it's better that he wasn't calling the plays for a 2-8 team.
I mean, the bar has been set pretty low for as far as who gets to call plays. I mean, we hired a first-time offensive coordinator out of the college ranks by Canada, but I mean, just that's another layer of this. You've got one guy doing install, one guy calling plays. Another layer behind this. You could definitely tell this past week after that game that there was a lot of tension in the locker room.
Oh, yeah.
Players basically have a hand in forcing this change because Najee Harris, who's always been a team first guy, had some very evasive answers post game. Deontay Johnson showed notable frustration. I mean, I haven't heard any clippings from George Pickens, but it wouldn't surprise me if there were at this point, just kind of knowing his track record. But just so many different things that you could really look into with this whole move. But the biggest thing I'll say is baby steps. The organization just did a huge step in getting rid of what they deemed was the problem in Matt Canada. So while we might not be sold on Eddie Faulkner and Mike Sullivan calling stuff, at least it's not Matt Canada. These next 7 games are the most important games of Kenny Pickett's career, because they're going to ultimately either paint a shadow of doubt or they're going to start maybe a Picasso. I don't know. Maybe that's being too grandiose, but or maybe this beer is just stronger than I thought it was. But do you guys, first off, who do you guys think who fired who? Because I think that's probably the most interesting aspect of this whole thing so far. Did the ownership come down and take the decision?
I'll take this first. You remember Bruce Arians had his meeting at postseason with Mike Tomlin, and Mike Tomlin told him he was going to be retained. And then a couple of days later, Bruce Arians was retired, and which wasn't his idea, and it came from ownership. But Mike Tomlin insisted that it was his choice to do that. So it's like I think he's a company man. Like the thing about working in the Steelers organization is they make organizational decisions, but I've been following them since the early 70s, and they have always made non-player decisions, especially or organizational decisions. That's how they refer to them, and they might attempt to get buy-in from everybody, but essentially, I think it comes from mainly from ownership or from a group decision of the owner and the input of the head coach and the GM. That's how they make these decisions. So it's I think both are true. I do think it came from ownership's impetus, but that the head coach ultimately is the one that talks to the guy and says you're fired.
Yeah, he brought him to the office and gave him his paper, but it was told from upstairs. Okay.
So he's got plausible deniability. Yes, I am the one that fired him, even if it wasn't my idea. He left out, but yeah.
I have a bit of a theory.
Ooh.
Because Tomlin was saying, so I'm kind of talking about when all this news was first breaking and we were finding out about it chronologically. And one of the early quotes from Tomlin was that he's like, I'm supposed to protect my coaches. It was something along those lines. I'm almost a little skeptical that Tomlin knew about it, like knew about the Canada firing, because, and the reason why I say this, Tomlin's definitely the type to tell his locker room before it leaks. That's kind of my view on it, to where I find it tough to believe that the Tomlin locker room would let it, like if Tomlin was making the decision, he wouldn't tell the locker room before everyone else.
Well, they didn't, but they didn't know. They apparently found out in social media, just like everybody else.
Which is what I'm saying, which is why I'm a little suspicious. And, it's not a huge deal. I guess it would show Tomlin's doesn't have the reins like we might think he does, but I think it might have been a straight call from Art Rooney II, where he says, you're done. And, Canada calls his agents like, I got fired. Then it trickles out to the press.
Right.
And then the first report is that Art Rooney II fired Canada. And then the report comes out that the locker room didn't know. I'm a little suspicious that Tomlin didn't know. He might have had a clue, but I'm not sure Tomlin knew before Canada is what my thing is.
That's interesting.
It's just a proper day for conspiracy theories because it's the 60th anniversary of JFK assassination, which, by the way, I am so freaking old. I was alive then. Go back to the show.
I was about to say
if there were multiple shooters or.
Oh my God! Well,
okay. This podcast is not delving into conspiracy.
Listen. I'll give you the 30-second answer. When I was a kid, when I was like the 5th grade, we did school projects on history, and I did my project on the Kennedy assassination. And right at that time, there were a lot of information. They were investigating it with the second House committee, and so no, there's about a 0% chance that it went down the way that they said it did. But I think that's the worst kept secret in the history of America.
The CIA investigates the CIA and finds out nothing's wrong.
Pretty much.
Well, we've been talking a lot about Nick.
Anyways, is there a way for the CIA to arrest Kenny Pickett?
Here's the thing. Do you watch last week's game? do you think changing offensive coordinators is really going to change much about how he's operating? Like maybe the offensive coordinator was just filling his brain with so much crap that getting rid of that voice will have a net positive effect. But here's the thing. Here's the people who were putting together the game plan, Corey. Mike Tomlin, Matt Canada, Eddie Faulkner, and Mike Sullivan, right? And Kenny Pickett. These are the people that had input into the plan. And every week they met and they figured out what Kenny wanted, the plays that he wanted to run, and then what would work package-wise for that team. And then they did the install. But it's like the only one person is missing from that group. The rest of them are still there. It's not like they brought in someone new that's going to be like, oh, yeah, your plan is stupid. And there's not a new head coach that's like, yeah, this idea of desperately trying not to make a mistake. Yeah, we got to get away from that. So I don't know. Maybe they'll call some better plays in the scripted portion or later or something that will help. But it doesn't feel like we're going to get this big, like, oh my God, we'll suddenly see Kenny Pickett.
It's highly doubtful that, Kenny goes into the game plan meeting this week. I'm trying to throw a post. I'm trying to throw seam routes.
Slants.
My arm's alive.
Slants. One slant. Yeah.
Let's just give him a shot of epi right to the chest before the game starts. But yeah, I mean, it's unrealistic to just all of a sudden think, that all of a sudden the shackles are going to be completely off, and the Steelers are going to have like a 400-yard game. How freaking funny would that be?
That would be hilarious.
Dr. Matt Canada, 400 yards. Oh my God, that people would never let that go. Like that would just carry that for.
I mean, if that happens, Mike Sullivan and Faulkner are gonna carry on. They'll be the permanent hires if that happens. Sorry,
we just gotta. I think the thing that's funny is I think we'll get to tell the players who really didn't like Matt Canada, because whenever there's a firing like this, those players always have a phenomenal game after. It's like they got the monkey off. So I'm expecting Najee Harris to have a great game, Deontay Johnson to have a great game, George Pickens to have a great game. They might combine for 150 yards.
You're asking for a lot.
Yeah, you really are, man.
A 150?
Well,
top three.
Some of the people that were the maddest about the whole situation are the people that are really like not performing. So who knows? I don't know.
Mason Cole, yeah, he didn't like Canada. Real stud on the offensive line.
Mason Cole. Oh man,
he's gonna have his legacy game now.
But so we kind of started talking about the Cleveland game. Is there anything else from the Cleveland game we really want to talk about, or are we just kind of ready to move on with this landmark moment in Steelers history?
It's a joke that Jaylen Warren isn't getting double to triple the amounts of carries that Najee Harris has been getting. I remember saying this multiple times at the beginning of last year. It's like beating a dead horse, but Warren's a better back than Najee. He's been a better back than Najee. There's not a single aspect that Najee's better at this point. Warren breaks more tackles. That's really the only thing that Najee sometimes maybe you could argue for. So he's a better route runner, better pass protector, better hands, faster.
He's just got juice, man. I mean, whether he's physically better, he just feels like he gives juice to the game. Like a lot of that is, I mean, there's obviously some talent and strength and everything, but he just has the attitude that runners need to have in the NFL, I think. But maybe he loses that attitude if he's not the backup anymore. Like, maybe he has some of that juice because he's coming in to provide a spark and he knows that's his role. But it feels like they're quick to get away from him after he has success because they feel this imperator to get Najee Harris going as well. Like, oh, if Jimmy Ward's had some success, well, now we got to get Najee in there and let him taste some of this. Which I'm not sure that's really the right strategy for winning. But I also, according to Tomlin, it's not the coordinator or Tomlin that makes the choice about which running back is in the game. He said that the two factors are the running backs themselves and the running backs coach, who's now the offensive coordinator. So I'm not sure that he's going to change his mind about more Jamie Warren just because he's now elevated, because he apparently has been doling out the playing time the way that he sees fit.
Well, and just to kind of bounce off the position coach thing, and this is something I wanted to talk about with Canada. Assuming Faulkner and Sullivan don't MacGyver their way to keeping the job next year, I want the whole staff gone, the whole offensive staff. Clean your hands of everything that was going on with Canada, because people don't remember this. Faulkner was a Canada guy. Like, he was at NC State during that period. He's followed him. So I really, just in general, just clean your hands of the whole thing. Let the new OC bring in all his guys. The O-line coach maybe could stay. I don't know. He's done okay. I don't know how dirty his hands are with some of the running schemes. I don't know if he's put in some of the newer ones that we've seen. I don't know if he pushed for the old ones. Only Tomlin and House knows that. But I would be more than okay with just scrubbing the whole offensive staff, letting whoever the new OC is pick his guys. I'd want that, actually. I'll be upset if we keep some of Canada's dirty laundry.
So not to stay on this for too long, because there are some other things I want to talk about. If the offensive staff is completely let go, Corey, I'll let you start out with this because you kind of brought this on. Who is the front runner you want as an offensive coordinator next year?
I don't want to get too out of the realm of possibility. I've seen the name floated. I've mentioned it before. Darren Bevel is probably the main guy that meets experience that the Steelers would trust, while also being a part of an innovative offense, I guess. I'm not in the room interviewing guys, so you're never going to be able to tell what guys want to do or anything. But that seems like a guy where it's an emerging offense. He's had experience, and his experience wasn't awful before. It's kind of, he's kind of a lot like, I'm blanking on his name. I've said it so many times. Ravens coordinator, Todd Monken.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to that, where he went back. He had a stint a little while ago, was out, reinvented himself, and now look at where the Ravens are. So that's kind of a similar-ish situation, but that's who I'd go.
Okay.
And let him poach as many as the Miami staff members as he can on the way out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who the next offensive coordinator is for the Steelers, unless it's under a different head coach. To me, the answer to your question is Ben Johnson. It's like, if I'm the ownership of this team, I am figuring out a way to retire Mike Tomlin, and let him.
Is this contract up after this year?
No, he's got a year left, which is the reason this is the year to do it. I'll tell you why. You retire him now. You bring in Ben Johnson, who runs probably the most innovative version of the kind of offense that people think of as the Steelers offense. And I think he's destined to be the next, big head coach in the league, or, candidate to be that anyway. But the thing about retiring Tomlin with a year left is, should he decide at some point he wants to coach again, the Steelers get compensation for him. So if you're going to make a move because you're thinking about, trying to go a different direction, now's the time. So I doubt seriously that that's happening, but I figure there's a 5% chance now, where, like I said, a week ago, I would have said there was a less than 1% chance, and now we're 5 times better than that. So to me, it's important what the head coach is. If the head coach is a defensive-minded coach that's married to attrition football and to not making any mistakes on offense, they're basically afraid that their offense is going to screw it up for their defense, then it doesn't matter who the offensive coordinator is. It's so rare that someone who's an offensive coordinator for that kind of coach can ever do something to overcome that. If you look back in the history of the league, there are just not that many situations where that happens, especially in the last 25 years or so.
And the reason why I'm a bit more optimistic than you are, and maybe it's unwarranted, but I think that because I believe Art made the call with Canada, I think there's a world where he goes to Tomlin and he says, the OC runs the offense. You worry about the defense. You worry about your timeouts. But whoever is the offensive coordinator, you give them the reins. We haven't had an offense that's successful since Ben left. And even then, from the looks of it, it was Ben carrying a lot of the weight for those teams in those last couple of years. It wasn't necessarily offensive innovation. It was chemistry between a elite receiver and an elite quarterback. I could see a world where Art tells Tomlin, like, listen, don't touch the offense. The OC we are bringing in, it is his role. It's going to be his job to score points. You worry about the defense stopping people, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the thing is, though, Tomlin's argument will be it all works together. What the idea is that the offense serves the defense and the defense serves it up for the offense, but they can't run independently because that's what bad teams do. They don't have any cohesion with their plan, and his defense is completely dependent upon the plan of the offense holding the ball and not making mistakes and not putting them in bad positions. They don't seem to react very well to being put in bad positions, by the way. They like to give up points whenever they're put in bad positions, like not the 3 because they got in a field goal position, but 7. So I think I'm glad that you're optimistic about it. And yes, it probably will be better. The next hire will be better than Canada, but I think here's the thing. We only need to go back to Randy Fichtner. It's like people had the same reaction to Randy Fichtner's job as offensive coordinator. And they were so happy that they finally were going to get rid of him and they brought someone else in. And then that turned out to be Matt Canada. Is there anybody here ready to argue that Matt Canada was an improvement over Randy Fichtner? I mean, if anything, you can say it was a lateral move, but that's what I fear. What I fear is the thing that needs to change isn't sitting at the desk of the offensive coordinator in his office.
And what's ironic is, we'll get off this quick soon, but what's ironic is the brand of Steelers football that they play on defense, in theory, and it's actually, I'm going to kind of argue what you said, Will, is that when you can get turnovers and you can steal possessions, if you have a high-octane offense and you can get 2 turnovers, you win. They just cannot match the point output. So it's almost like if you want to play a turnover game and you have these edge rushers who will get forced fumbles and create pressure where the quarterback has to get the ball out of his hands, that's actually, if you're creating turnovers, which seems to be their MO these past 2 years with this defense, then that's actually something that'll win you high-scoring games where even if they're scoring, if you can get 2 off them and you punt once, then you're going to win.
Yeah, but okay, Jeremy, I'm going to throw it to you so you can talk. You can do this for me. But Tomlin's argument is going to be like, did you see Monday Night Football? They threw an end zone, a red zone interception. They had a fumble in the red zone. It's like that could be the most high-powered offense in football. They had drops. It's like we can't afford to make these kinds of mistakes, so they don't try to make those kinds of mistakes. That would be his argument. So, like, how do you, if you're talking to Art Rooney, how do you out-talk Tomlin on the subject?
Well, I mean, I think part of it is, bringing in a guy that kind of what Corey said is, just he takes over the offense and you tell Mike Tomlin, I was going to bring this up. This is a good segue. Mike Tomlin just needs to sit back and be that like CEO, like football coach, like let a defensive coordinator do his thing. Let an offensive coordinator do his thing. You still be that player coach that everyone loves and wants to come play for you. Shoot, The Athletic did a survey of like 85 players. 28% said, or I think 26 to 28%, can't remember, said that the coach that they'd want to play for is Mike Tomlin.
And Corey responded to that with,
95% of them were probably defensive players.
That's right.
That's fair. Don't get me wrong. But you get my point, though. Mike just needs to take his hands out of the cookie jar and let people who make the cookies, make the cookies and put them out there or whatever. I don't know.
I bet you Blake Martinez was a part of that poll.
Yeah, well, and Miles Jack, too. Don't forget him.
Yeah, Miles Jack, too. He loves it here.
And I hear they're signing Darius Leonard, too,
We'll find right? Yeah, how many linebackers can we possibly sign in a week? Let's see.
Every linebacker yet.
But
hey, the secondary question, how many can cover? 0.
Yeah, right. But I mean, to throw my name out there, because I think, this organization's about to clean house anyway. I wouldn't mind getting Eric Bieniemy. He has Sam Howell playing at a very high level. They're in games that it hasn't always resulted in points, but he's got a good offensive system. You know, you've seen it outside of Kansas City now. So it's like, here's a guy with a proven track record of one, working with elite talent in Kansas City, now doing pretty well with, you know, a group not nearly as talented in Washington. You know, I just think Washington's going to clean house. He's a guy who you tell him, look, you come to Pittsburgh and turn things around, you're going to have a head coaching job wherever you want. Like this is the job that proves to the rest of the NFL that you can be, you know, like that your system works everywhere you go. So like,
I mean, he'd argue that that's what he's doing in Washington is proving that maybe, but it's very impressive actually what he's doing because
it is,
you know, but I would say this. Do you think how do you think the talent in Washington compares to the talent in Pittsburgh on offense?
I think the O line's significantly worse.
Okay.
I think that's a big factor.
I've not watched a ton of Washington football, so I can't really compare. I mean, tight ends, I'd give us the slight advantage, but not a whole lot. Yeah. Overall receiving core, I'd give to them because I feel like they're better from top to bottom as we're good at the top, not so good.
Allen Robinson's
got like
number
4 or
3
5 guys.
And I'm not the biggest Brian Robinson fan, but I will take their running backs over the Steelers. I mean, I think it's comparable, and then it just comes down to do you believe in Sam Howell or Kenny Pickett more? Personally, I would have said I'd take coming out as a prospect, I would have liked Kenny Pickett over Sam Howell. But yeah, it's just interesting. It's like he's not working with. I guess my point was it's not like he's working with so much more there.
Right.
In a way, he's kind of working with less. Or comparable talent at worst. So yeah, it's interesting. I think the only way you're going to get him to run the offense in Pittsburgh is if you give him the head coaching job, which
maybe
would not be if Tomlin's announced tomorrow he's retiring. Bieniemy would be on the short list. He'd get an interview for sure.
Yeah, but so and not that this really factored into my decision or whatever. But the other thing is, if you hire Bieniemy and he proves in a year or two that he's a high-end coordinator and he's ready to be a head coach, Steelers get draft pick compensation for him leaving too. So that was a motivation or whatever, just kind of a thought that popped in the back of my head. I think it's a hire that can work on multiple levels. So I mean that's kind of the guy in the back of my head that said he's been one place with a lot of talent, one place with okay talent. Boy, if he comes to Pittsburgh, and becomes like, a legend that kind of puts Pittsburgh back on track, so to say. The other thing is this. He's worked with Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the league. He's worked with Sam Howell, who looks like he has an NFL future now, honestly, under Eric Bieniemy. I would love to get his input on who the next quarterback could be too, because he's seen the best. He's worked with the best. I would like a legitimate, outside the Steelers organization take at, no, we need to go get this quarterback over this quarterback. Because I think we all saw what happened when, Kevin Colbert, best intentions as is, kind of saddled Pittsburgh with Pickett and then left to ride off into the sunset himself.
Yeah,
so
nice job.
I would like
also, he threw in Najee Harris just before he left as well.
Sure.
By the way, if I have to choose a real coordinator that's not a head coaching candidate right now in the NFL, I'll beat the drum again for AJ Smith, the coordinator of the Houston Roughnecks of the USFL, XFL. I forget which XFL. I think.
They're merging anyway. So.
Well, exactly, and the Gamblers and the Roughnecks both had good coordinators, but no, AJ Smith I think is a guy that he is. I know that Wade Phillips thinks the world of him. He thought that he is the next really next young offensive guru, and that fits the mold of like where the NFL seems to be going. So
okay, all right.
At any rate, that's just a name. I mentioned him before on the show when we were talking one time about coordinators.
Gotcha. Well, guys, I don't know about you, but I think it's time to shift off the coordinator talk. We've only been covering it for a better part of a half hour here. So believe it or not, Pittsburgh actually has to play a game this week.
What?
Yeah, right. Pittsburgh heads to Cincinnati, to the jungle, where supposedly Mike Tomlin has a lot of respect for the jungle in his press conference. But anyway,
He sees himself as Marvin Harris, as what's his name? Was it the coach
Marvin Lewis.
Marvin Lewis? Yeah, sorry, they're like two peas in a pod. Sorry, go ahead. I'll shut up.
No, you're good. But Pittsburgh heads to Cincinnati this week. Obviously, big news out of Cincinnati is no Joe Burrow. Seems like the Steelers just are getting lucky this year at times. You hate to see it because Joe Burrow's, a great quarterback and all, but just another bullet the Steelers are going to be able to dodge this week. It's going to start with some matchups. Corey, let's go with you. What do you think is a big matchup we need to watch this week outside of the obvious in Jake Browning? I mean, he's such a great quarterback. So,
I think just our tight ends versus the middle of the field. I mean, we always talk about their linebackers. Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt are about as good as it gets inside for a duo. And I mean, the book is out on us. We're going to throw 15 yards and in outside of the hash, way outside of the hash, outside of the alley even. So, there's a chance we do that and we roll to the tune of 13 points, or maybe we open it up and we challenge those guys. It's going to be interesting because, Kenny's going to have to step up and make some big boy throws at some point if he wants to have a future in the NFL. I mean, we can't just keep the baby wheels or the baby locks on him and let him throw Josh Dobbs threw with more, aggression when he was a third stringer. I guess that's part of the deal, but you're also trying to. Dobbs was always thought of the not aggressive, play it safe, not turn it over QB. And, he gets out of the Steelers and he's spinning it. So it's kind of weird. I just think that those linebackers could play a role if we do decide to open it up. If we don't, then we're going to be talking about how Sullivan and them are Canada the same and nothing's changing for the rest of the year. But we'll see.
Good. Corey, you said it twice there, and I'm not sure I heard you correctly. Did you say open up the offense?
Yeah, the middle part,
Last time I checked, you were the only one not drinking on this show. Will, what's another matchup we should watch for this week?
Well, you have to help me on the injury front. Is Cam Taylor-Britt out, or is he going to play in this game?
That's a good question. I'm not totally sure. So since you mentioned injuries, go ahead and mention today's. The only two that did not practice for the Steelers was Minka, an obvious exclusion, but George Pickens did not practice with a shin today. So maybe something to monitor as the week goes on. Let's see what the good old Twitter.
He heard himself celebrating Matt Canada's firing. But what was the answer about Cam Taylor-Britt? Did he practice or not today?
I'm not sure here. Let's take a quick look.
Because I kind of feel like if you're, I'm trying to think about how I perceive this new offensive coordination will play itself out. And it does feel like, maybe Kenny will get encouraged in the scripted plays, especially early in the game, to look for some stuff that's more aggressive downfield. And, going to the tight ends in the middle of the field against these linebackers feels like a poor choice. So that may not be there readily as much as they would like it to be this week. But I feel like, that if they don't have Cam Taylor-Britt, that's the matchup that I would be worried about if I'm the Bengals.
Gotcha.
That I do think they have more depth than a team like the Steelers have. But Cam Taylor-Britt is that guy that he's their, further along version of Joey Porter, the guy that can just stick to somebody, whoever you got that's good on the other side. And getting behind him, I'm just looking to see while you're looking for the injury reports. I'll just say this: it's like Awuzie, is like the guy behind him, and that's a pretty good step down. DJ Ivy, who we liked a little bit coming out, is not the worst extra cornerback to have, but DJ Turner's had his ups and downs as we thought he might. He's playing on the outside, which we really thought he would be like the nickel guy, but they have Mike Hilton, so it was like a weird situation. The Bengals had Mike Hilton, who was one of the better nickels in the league, and then they brought DJ Turner in, who I think is ideally suited as the nickel. So
even Cam Taylor-Britt profiled a little bit more as a nickel I thought when he was coming
I
out.
thought I liked him. I liked him a lot as an outside guy just because I felt like, if I recall correctly, he had long arms. He had that kind of build, more of the build of an outside guy, even though he was 5'11" and a
Well, he's
half.
got speed too.
Yeah, just that dude's a stud. He was covering number ones in Nebraska for sure. Like, he was not just a guy there.
So he did not practice today.
Yeah,
If
they're missing, yeah, if they're missing him, then I think there's a good chance that that the George Pickens matchup is a bit of a problem for them, because they don't have a lot of size as it is in terms of corners. And so if you take away also the one guy who has like a little bit of length and the experience covering number ones, then yeah, it starts to get a little bit skinny for the Bengals, and I could see that being a matchup that could be exploited because, I don't have to imagine too much about Kenny Pickett, feeling comfortable throwing it to Pickens on the outside. So that's something that he appears to be pretty good at. I do think teams are sitting on the back shoulder throws more. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but it's trending this way the last couple of weeks that defenders are starting to make plays on those balls that they were getting free looks at earlier in the year. So
because Kenny hasn't been able to punish them, just going over the top like
right, you got to go deep. Yeah, once they figure out that you're not going to do that, especially on the post. So if you know as a cornerback that you don't have to worry about the guy beating you to the post, and you don't have to, you mainly have to worry about him, coming back on back shoulder throws and under throws, then yeah, you're going to play that. You have a little bit more shot at it than you do when you're really worried about burning them.
If you remember, we hit the post once earlier in the year and it was wide open. And
from the slot, right? Yeah,
people were kind of talking about the post a little, and hyped it as a good throw from Kenny, and we were like, it's a fair throw, but it was also wide open. Like, you got to be able to hit that throw when it's a little covered, and then the next week 2 weeks later, he underthrows a seam to Calvin Austin with a linebacker covering him, and we haven't really seen much deep over the middle of the field since that throw. Now that I think of it,
nope.
So,
and Will, to go ahead and answer your question, Cam Taylor-Britt did not practice today with a quad. Other people who did not practice, since we're on the topic of injury report, T. Higgins did not practice with his hamstring issue. And DJ Reader did not practice, but it's not injury related. It's illness related. So
and Henderson did practice because he's the other injured guy they had. So he must have practiced.
Henderson.
Hendrickson, their pass rusher. Yeah.
He's not even on their injury report. So
he was hurt.
As we all know, that doesn't really mean anything.
No, not with that. Not with that team. Yeah, shit. That was like the worst cover up of all time. Whatever's going on with him.
But to very good lead in here, gentlemen. My matchup to watch was Hendrickson versus Dan Moore. Hendrickson's been playing at a whole nother level this year. He was good last year. He's playing fantastic this year. I think he's like 5th in the league in sacks. Like, he's up there on the sack chart, and he is looking quick and powerful as ever. And he's even been dinged up, honestly, the last 2 weeks with small little ailments. Dan Moore better be ready, or it doesn't matter what offense we trot out there. Kenny Pickett's going to be in the dirt more often than not. Any other matchups we should be on the lookout for here against the Bengals, gents? Anything else you think we should highlight? Even though, Will, I think you made a great point. If no Cam Taylor-Britt's out there, I feel a lot better attacking DJ Turner on the outside. Just because he seems to be giving some things up
and down. I mean, that's the thing about him, is just up and down. And Mike Hilton, if you have to stretch Mike Hilton vertically, that's also not a great favorable thing for him either. So yeah, this could be an issue. Just quickly, I'm trying to recall, going back to 2019, why Baron Browning would not have been drafted. For instance, I guess I looked. He's from a Power 5 school. He was a 4-year starter with statistically, like, you look at his chart, like he hits all the Bill Parcells check marks. He had good completion percentage, good rating, touchdown to interceptions. Is not, there's not something like wrong with him. He doesn't have some kind of like fatal flaw. So he's, I would argue he might actually be a better quarterback prospect than DTR. So they just lost to the team with a better defense, but not as good a quarterback play. So I think, in general, this is a tricky thing. The Bengals can't it can't just be assumed that they're not going to be good offensively in this game because they don't have Joe Burrow. That's not really a matchup, but that's a thing.
And these backups always have about a 3-week grace period where they play pretty damn good.
Exactly.
And he's in his grace period right now. He's in the game where he goes for 3 touchdowns, and the next week will be 2, and then it'll be 1, and then you kind of have some 0 touchdown, 1 interception weeks. But right now we're in the danger zone of the backup QB land where they are playing with a lot of fire, and teams don't really have them figured out yet. So it's a bit of a concern.
Yeah, I mean, no game tape of Jake Browning this year. I think that's the big thing. I mean, most teams will have to go back to Washington, honestly, to see the type of style he likes to play with and whatnot, where he had moderate success. It's not like he lit the world on fire there, but he was a good quarterback that came out.
He piloted a top 4 team.
Say that again?
He piloted a top 4 team.
Oh, really? I don't.
That was that defense with Sidney Murphy, Vita Vea, that linebacker that beat his girlfriend.
That linebacker that beat his girlfriend.
Yeah, he was a son.
The way you're known for eternity. Poor guy.
But
I feel like you make your own bet in that scenario.
Yeah, but I mean, you guys,
you don't want to be known as the guy who beats his girlfriend. There's one easy thing to do. It's to not beat your girlfriend.
Yeah. But I mean, honestly, for Jake Browning coming in late, I didn't think he looked too bad, honestly. I understand the game was out of reach, by the time he was in there for the most part, but you definitely saw things that, made it look like this guy could move the ball. So it will be interesting to see how we play him. No Dick LeBeau, so there's no rookie or, young quarterback advantage here anymore. But it'll be very interesting to see, how they use him. One last thing, the Bengals use a variety of tight ends here, and we've got linebackers that don't cover. Tanner Hudson, undrafted, big athletic dude. They've got Irv Smith, who's more of a big wide receiver at this point in his career, but they use a variety of guys. Our inside linebackers better be ready. Michael Walker, Landon Roberts, those guys we just signed, Blake Martinez, Miles Jack, if those guys play.
I thought Michael Walker, he had I mean, let's put it this way. If you're a coverage linebacker in the NFL, you're gonna get beat sometimes. I mean, there's some situations and some matchups where you don't really have that much of a hope if the offensive line protects and the quarterback has, the guts to make throws. By the way, what's his name? Brock Purdy carved up Tampa Bay, who have nice linebackers, and he did it by layering balls like an inch above their heads and everything, So yeah, you're going to get beat a little bit, but I thought that is it Michael or Michael? We were debating this during the game.
I think it's Michael.
So Michael Walker, I felt for a guy that just showed up in town, has only been there 2 weeks, did a passable job. He's the best coverage linebacker they have at the moment on the roster. So
he proved himself nicely.
I thought it wasn't too bad. Wasn't perfect, but I appreciated his performance, and I appreciated the fact that he even made some plays downhill in the run game, which is not his strength really. So he's you brought in a vet who's
keep those guys clean, and they will. I mean that's the big thing. I will say, Jeremy, if we get beat by these tight ends, we're in for a long rest of the year because there is not a worse tight end group in the NFL, and I'm not sure there's been a worse one in the last 3 or 4 years. And that's only what I can remember. This tight end group is.
I don't know. Do you remember the Steelers of a couple of years ago?
Sorry, say, bro.
Pretty bad group.
Vance McDonald would easily be at the tight end one there. Not even kidding.
Yeah, right on.
Man, he had that stiff arm. Just trip down memory lane.
That was a hell of a stiff arm. But there are some other games happening around the league this year, believe it or not. The Turkey Day tomorrow.
Three great teams playing tomorrow, Jeremy. Problem is they're not playing each other.
Yeah, I was about ready to say. Unfortunately, you should be looking at a bunch of blowouts on Thanksgiving rather than some good games. I don't know. I think Green Bay Detroit has a chance to be a better game than it could be. I wasn't really going to go with any of those games just because I feel like there's some obvious mismatches there, obvious winners there when there's some other tight matchups around the league. One, we're going to go with the New Orleans Saints are visiting the Atlanta Falcons. And believe it or not, that game very well could decide the future of the NFC South. Those two, one of those teams is 6-5. The other one is 5-5, I believe. Whoever wins that might control their own destiny. So, Corey, let's go to you. New Orleans is headed to Atlanta. They are favored by 1.
Is Derek Carr playing?
Believe so.
Oh, I almost like him more with Jameis, if I'm going to be honest. The Falcons, the Steelers are almost to the level of dysfunction on offense they are, but it is like a crime to football how they use their talent on offense, where they just almost every play choose to give it to people less talented than the people they have on the field. Like
Washington. Sorry, excuse me.
To draw a similarity, it would be like, Allen Robinson getting 60% of our targets, and then Najee getting 30% of our target, or like 60% of our runs, 70% of our runs, which does happen. So we're halfway there. But like they take Bijan off the field in the red zone. It's just Drake London, who isn't a perfect receiver, but does have a lot of strengths, is used solely as a blocker. Then, we don't even need to get started on Kyle Pitts. I don't think they don't have the QB to even really, deliver the ball around the field. I'm just not a believer in that team. The Saints actually have a not bad defense. I like Jameis with that offense a little more. Seems like they flow a little better, but I'm still going to roll with the Saints reluctantly.
All right, Will?
I don't think these two teams are close. I know Atlanta won some games earlier in the year, but they struck me as even at that time a little bit like a team that won games that they really didn't. They probably weren't going to win if they replayed them 10 times again.
We don't know any teams like that, by the way.
No, never heard of them. No, I will take the Saints. I just feel like the Saints. We tend to fans that are not fans of the team. I think tend to think of ranking teams based on their offensive success. So yes, the Saints on offense are mediocre to bad. And so we tend to think of them as being, Atlanta's bad on offense. So is New Orleans. So it's going to be a close game. But I think New Orleans' defense is actually better than that. They do a lot of little things right on special teams. I will take New Orleans in this game against Atlanta. I just feel like Atlanta is nondescript. They kind of need to play a team that either is just not having a good week or is worse than them, of which there are not many in the league.
Yeah, I like the Saints here too, regardless of who's at quarterback. Hell, Taysom Hill could be the starter at quarterback. I'd still take the Saints, in this situation. One, I just feel like their offense is better. They've got more. I don't know if they have more talent, but they do a lot better job of using the talent they have there. But I think the Saints are obvious pick here, but I just thought it was a good one to pick since, you very well could see one of those teams representing the NFC South in the playoffs. God, can we not have a team represent the NFC South this year? Anyway, that's a conversation for another time. Another big game that could very well decide the future of a Division II. The Jacksonville Jaguars are heading down to the very hot Houston Texans. Jacksonville is favored by 1.5. Will, I'll let you start out with this one.
Yeah, now this is a closer game to me. I feel like, the Jacksonville defense and Houston offense, I feel like are a really good matchup of really good units. And in both cases, the other side of the ball, I think that's where the game will be decided is Jacksonville's offense against Houston's defense, which I think is, neither one of them has really played lights out. If I have to have a guess, I'm going to say that Houston, momentum is so fleeting in the NFL. It's like it lasts for one series, not even a whole game, let alone a few weeks. But I do think that Houston is kind of feeling it right now. Like they are starting to believe a little bit that they might, not be the worst team in the league. And I feel like that's very powerful against a team like, a division rival game. So close game. What's the spread in this game?
Only 1.5.
But Jacksonville's getting it.
Jacksonville's getting it though.
Yeah, I'll take the points and Houston.
Gotcha, Corey. Throw it up to you.
This is going to be a fun game for people who argue about QB rankings online all the time because that Lawrence is kind of the bar that Stroud's been put to throughout the beginning of the year, and then as of late, it's kind of been, Stroud's passed him up, but then Stroud throws 3 interceptions, and Lawrence has his best week of the season. So that kind of reignited that argument a little.
Mm-hmm.
Devin Singletary is really coming on for the Texans. I know everyone kind of thought of Dameon Pierce as that back. I'm not sure what's really been going on with him. He just hasn't really gone rolling. And Devin Singletary really hadn't before this game. But last game, he really came on strong. I'm inclined to take the hot team in Houston. But this is going to be, I'm excited for this game. I would not be surprised at it going either way.
So just to clarify,
pick one.
Houston, the point.
Houston. Yeah, Houston.
Okay. Right. I wasn't sure I got an answer out of you there. So.
That was really tricky. I like that.
Right. I think this could possibly be the best game of the week, and we're about to pick one that could be the best game of the week after this. Just because so much is on the line here for both these teams. I mean, if Houston wins, D'Amico Ryans, could walk away with Coach of the Year award if he gets the, Houston Texans from absolute shit to playoffs in one off season, not even a full off season, if you want to give him that. So, but then again, you've got Jacksonville, who played really well in a divisional game last week. However, I was reading something earlier in the week that when a team plays 2 division games back to back, if they win the first one and they are favored in the second, they drop that second game almost 70% of the time. And that's another reason I'm going with Houston. Not only are they hot, it very interesting statistic. I can't remember. I saw it somewhere on Twitter. It was a verified source, so I trusted in bringing it up here. It's tough to play 2 division games back to back when both mean so much. So I'm going with the Texans here. So that a lot's going right for them right now. Tank Dell, we can't talk enough good things about him. We loved him in the pre-draft process. Nico Collins is playing great. Dalton Schultz is a reliable option. Hell, Noah freaking Brown is playing, so good for them. So just I'm going with the Texans. They're hot, but that statistic just kind of sold it for me. I thought that was very interesting. So
you sound like a degenerate bettor. Good for you.
Yeah, I lose most of my bets. So I don't know if you should pay attention to me or not. Steeler fans out there, don't listen to me for betting advice, but just pick your heart. That's what I'm going to say here. And I was not paid to persuade you in one way or the other. What could be the biggest game of the week is Buffalo is headed to Philadelphia. Philadelphia is favored by 3.5 points here. I'm going to take this one. I'm taking Buffalo to win and cover. They had a big game against the Jets, a game that the Jets didn't have a ton to play for. Don't get me wrong. The Jets are out of the playoff hunt. They're not trending in the right direction. Hell, they benched Zach Wilson for Tim freaking Boyle. And I had to look up who that was for a second.
Were you impressed?
No, I wasn't. Where did he come out of? Delaware or something? Like some really small school?
Out of some small school, and he was not productive.
Wait, I'm sorry. Who's the player we're talking about?
Boyle.
Oh, Tim Boyle, Boston College, right?
Boston College.
Oh man, that seems too rich. I guess I was wrong about the small school thing here. Corey, you look that up while I'm going on my rant here. But
no,
Eastern Kentucky.
UConn. He started at UConn. That's where I was thinking.
UConn and then Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah. But Buffalo looked remarkably better on offense going against a really good defense in the New York Jets. That's the one thing the Jets hang their hat on. Their defense has been top tier all year long. Philadelphia, don't get me wrong, they have a good defense, but they can get a little leaky at times. Hell, they should have lost that game the other night. But luckily for them, Marquez Valdes-Scantling does not possess hands. Speed, but no hands. So I like Buffalo here. I think they might have turned the page on offense a little bit here. So we'll see if their defense can hold up. But I like Buffalo to cover the 3.5 and win. Will, let's go to you, buddy.
This game's in Philly, right?
Yes. in Philly.
I'm also taking the Buffalo Bills. So I'll take the suspense out of it. I think Buffalo's a better team. They're like, it's a results business, and Philadelphia had the great result on Monday, but I think deep down inside they consider themselves a little bit, they feel relieved to get out of there with a win. I'm sure they didn't like go in there thinking we're going to blow this team out or whatever. And Buffalo, I think they got this desperation angle working for them a little bit, and also I think the weather is going to be poor. So that's way favors Buffalo. I think like Buffalo, like Pittsburgh, is a team that plays in the practices if they want to, plays a lot in really bad weather, and I just feel like in a way. It could be the Josh Allen show. It should be the Josh Allen show. There's a guy that should be unfazed completely by weather. So yeah, I'll take the Bills. I feel like they're going to end up with a better looking record at the end of the season than they have right now, and there's got to be places where they steal one. But I think maybe they're slightly better than the Eagles actually.
Yeah, Will, you bring up a good point. Just real quick, Corey. Right now, projected for Sunday, looks like there is a 35% chance of rain. So you bring up an interesting point.
Will. Yeah, it's just supposed to be crappy in the Northeast this weekend. That's this much I know. So
okay, all right, Corey.
First, I want to come at you with an update on Tim Boyle because these are very
fine.
These are some very notable stats.
Okay, all right.
He had 2,134 yards his senior year at Eastern Kentucky, 11 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. With a 61% completion percentage.
What was his completion percentage?
61.
Okay, you led me on there a little bit. I thought you were going to throw some big numbers at my name there for a second.
No, I'm pretty shocked a guy like this even got a tryout. Like, if I'm being honest, just looking at it being from a smaller school with this level of production.
I don't know this. Was his brother an NFL quarterback? That's what I think.
Interesting. Boyle, but I mean, he's been Aaron Rodgers' lackey, So
yeah, that's
the big thing. Like his best friend.
Yeah. So I mean, Rodgers just brought him along when he brought it over everyone else he ordered from Green Bay. So
usually, if you're going to be a stud quarterback's caddy, it's like they're not threatened by you. That's like a gig.
It's like the funny guy who does the celebrations with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of small school QBs. Josh Allen is kind of really the X factor in this one. You two picking the Bills almost makes me want to go the Eagles because that O-line and D-line is just phenomenal. And I don't think the Bills have the level of play callers that the Chiefs have. And I just don't think the Chiefs or the Bills will be able to limit them like the Chiefs did. So I'm just going to go with the Eagles here. I battle the trenches, especially in a poor weather game. And I think even though Josh Allen's used to the poor weather, I think it's more beneficial for a run game like the Eagles to really power through and just kind of close the game. So that's going to be my answer is Eagles to cover.
Okay, cover and win. All right. So that brings us to our 5-star matchup of the week. The Matt Canada free Pittsburgh Steelers head to Cincinnati. Pittsburgh is favored by 1.5 going into Cincinnati. I think that's the anti-Joe Burrow effect there. But Corey, how about you start us off on this one?
And I can make real picks again because my losing superstition bets finally failed this week.
About time.
But I'm still gonna lean on some superstition. There's stats somewhere to back it up. Just whenever a poor coach gets out of there, the team ends up playing well. I think that's going to be the case. I think the offense has a minor explosion. I think we get over 300 yards, and I think we get 20 plus points. Maybe not 30, but 20 to 24 feels like a reasonable number. So I'm just going to go off the positive Canada's gone energy and take the Steelers here. I'll throw out a score of 23-17.
All right. Will?
Wow, that's it's like, have you been Reading my email. I'm just wondering. Are you actually? You mentioned the CIA earlier. I'm wondering if you have also been tapping into my phone, possibly.
Do you have an
Um,
interview we didn't know about, Corey?
um, yeah, I I think on paper the Steelers are a better team, especially without Joe Burrow this week. And yes, an inexperienced quarterback should have a difficult time against a good defense like the Steelers bring. And the bump, removing Canada bump is a real thing. All that's true. So, I'm going to pick the Steelers to win the game. I'll give it a score of 22-19 just to be different. But I will say this. I don't think we should underestimate Jake Browning. I'll say it again. Speaking of college stats, for example, Kenny Pickett in college, 7.3 yards per attempt, 62.4% completion percentage, 81 touchdowns to 32 interceptions. Right, pretty not horrible numbers. Jake Browning, 8.3 yards an attempt, 64.6 percentage, 94 touchdowns, and 34 interceptions. So all I'm saying, what's that?
I said, take that, Kenny.
Yeah, Kenny was a first-round draft pick. Jake Browning was undrafted. I'm still trying to figure out why he was undrafted. Guess because he didn't play in Pittsburgh, and the Steelers didn't need a quarterback that year. So all I'm saying is, he's really an unknown as far as an NFL player. It's like if he, learned something about, preparation and things, to be a professional NFL quarterback, then they might not be terrible, and they might be able to do better than 19 points with that receiving crew and Joe Mixon, who we didn't mention to this point.
About to say, he certainly has the weapons too. It's not going to be like a college QB who has weapons going to a team without him. He certainly is arguably the best receiving core in the league, right up there with the Dolphins. So.
Right. So this is what I'm saying. It's like I think I'm picking the Steelers to win this game, but I'll tell you this. I won't be absolutely stunned if they lose this game, just like I wasn't last week that they lost. And it would signal a very bad, if they can't even get the boost out of getting rid of Matt Canada and trying to appease the players and win the locker room back, then they may have bigger problems than we even know at this point. Jeremy, throw it to you.
Sorry, you said 22-19?
I did.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
You're going to be different now?
I couldn't remember if you had said a score, and then I remember thinking, 19, that's such a weird number. How do you get there? But
so is 22 isn't? I think
that's not the point. That's not the point. But I like Pittsburgh this week. I just think getting rid of Canada, I think that means George Pickens could just have a monster game. And if there's no Cam Taylor-Britt, I think there's even a bigger chance of that, because I think Taylor-Britt would have been the guy following Pickens around. I think we'll challenge them vertically, potentially. I don't know. Maybe that's too much to hope for still. Maybe over the middle. Maybe still too much hoping for. But
how many yards is vertically?
Just vertically. Yeah, I know. We've said that a few times, and I'm almost in disbelief. But
how many yards forward can Kenny throw is really the question here. It's 30 yards vertical.
For this team, yeah.
Especially if it's a throw down the sideline where you can let go of it 1.5 seconds after the snap. Yes.
Yep. But I just think this is a kind of a get-right week, even though I know going to Cincinnati is a tough game. It's not like I'm predicting, the Steelers' first 400-yard game or anything, because I definitely don't think that's going to happen. But I just think the offense does more with the guys that we're trying to win with, when Pickens, Johnson, just all this things where we can be better. I think they're just a little more on track this week. I think we're just going to throw out a bunch of bad plays that no one really wanted to run with Canada. I think you're just going to see a lot of negative playbook stuff leave. So, and then I like our defensive matchup, honestly, especially if T. Higgins is not in there. I think we can kind of allow Joey Porter Jr. to follow Jamar Chase around a bit. Hopefully not get like 17 freaking holding calls.
I really should have mentioned that as a matchup, because that was one of my big positives for Joey Porter when I was watching him. It's like specifically for the Steelers. I
Mhm.
thought he matched up well with a guy in the mold of Jamar Chase. Now you never know until they play each other, but I mean when you play a guy twice a year and it's a probable playoff matchup, that's something you probably should consider when taking a corner. So I kind of really should have mentioned that. That's a huge matchup actually.
Yeah, that's a good one we didn't hit.
Yeah, and then I just think I know Cincinnati's offensive line is better, but I think the emergence of Keanu Benton has been just a huge boost for this defense. When hey, I'm getting a healthy Cam Hayward back, I feel like we've just been playing a lot better on defense once those two have come back. So I like the Steelers this week. I'm going to go 23-13. I think we're going to cover. I think Browning will be able to move the ball consistently. Consistency is always a question. And then how far do those drives go? I think is the other one. And if the weather in the Northeast is bad, it means it's going to be at least cold in Cincinnati. Could impact the field goal game there a little bit too. And
In the 40s and some rain there as well.
yeah,
Does
Nick
anyone
Pearson
have-
has been known to miss one here and there. I mean, shoot, we've seen it in games against Pittsburgh. So he's not as, as infallible as I'd say Chris Boswell is, just super consistent, the Wizard of Oz he is. So
what was Jake Browning's hand size, Will? Do you have those numbers on?
now
That's
we're
funny.
really digging into statistics.
Well, here's the thing. You ask me these kinds of questions like you think that I don't have access to this information, man. I got this information. You want to know?
What is it?
Yeah.
Let's see. 9 1/4.
That's small. What's
But I
Kenny's?
say what were Kenny's?
Hey, whoa. 9 1/4. Kenny Pickett is smaller than that. Let's see. Kenny Pickett is 8
Oh,
5/8.
God.
8
What
5/8.
the hell?
Wow.
That's crazy.
So which small-handed QB comes out with the win this week?
No, I'll be honest with you. I think you're gonna. Browning's a little bit. He's not quite as tall. He's not quite as stocky as Kenny Pickett is these days. But I think the physical tools are similar. I think the difference is that Browning's rep coming out is that he made his bones because he was better at processing and seeing the field. So it's like he's in the NFL even as an undrafted guy that's stuck because he seems to be pretty good at that part of the game.
Not really Joe Burrow's buddy. He got there on his own merit.
Pretty much. Yeah. So, I mean, Joe Burrow's buddy might be Corey Curtis. Maybe he'll be there, next
Boy,
year.
yeah. A little shout out to Corey Curtis there. He was throwing some barbs around on Twitter too. I follow him a little bit.
I think he's had it, man. He's like, I don't care if anybody ever hires me ever again. I'm gonna give him my 2 cents worth. So he's the guy you'd really want him to be with the Steelers for a couple of years because when he left, he would tell you everything. He'd be he's not keeping any kind of veil of silence around. He's telling you what we would like Ben to do. Be like, oh well, let me tell you something about Mike.
Right?
Yeah.
He throws up before
would,
every game. He's so scared. It's like that's what you want. But
that would be a true tell-all right there.
We need to get Antonio Brown in front of a good interviewer to where they can really work some info out of him because he would do it.
Yeah, but you'd have to wonder if what he said was accurate.
Yeah, as I already say,
live in his own world. That
with Antonio, you never know whether it's true or not.
And also Antonio Brown, was involved in the JFK assassination. Just bring it back.
Oh God, another back to that.
Seriously though, if you listen to the show or you're on the board and you want to have access to some more information about the JFK assassination, you send me a message. I'll hook you up. I got all the beats.
Well, with that being said, I think we should wrap it up.
I may not know who the next coordinator of the Steelers is going to be, but I know who shot JFK.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Steeler fans, for another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Coleman. You know me as Smith of Smoking, joined by Will Matsack, Bradshaw to Ben, and Corey Karbowski, Corey39. From all of us here at the podcast in SteelerFury.com, have a happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully you get to enjoy it with your family, your friends, over, a big roasted turkey, some great sides, some stuffing. Yes, Will's doing a turkey on the screen for those of you that are listening. But thanks again. Enjoy your holiday. Go Steelers.
Go Steelers. Enjoy your holiday, everybody.